doesn't need to be overly explained. It's just a little work of art that he made, a cinematic piece, and that I like alternative movies and alternative music, and that's sort of what it felt like to me. You couldn't say, "Oh, this has got a catchy hook. Oh, this is fast. This is thrilling." No, it's just taking its time and going in weird directions, and I like that. All I want is to take my son surfing.
Don't kid yourself now.
Before you can have everything, you have to experience nothing.
What?
Pathetic.
That's a good one.
So I got to say, I'm a huge fan of Australian movies from the 70s, particularly Road Games and Wake and Fright. And I was wondering, are you also a fan of the genre? Because The Surfer reminded me of those movies in a really cool way.
Well, I know that Lorcan and Martin, the writer, they wanted me to look at Wake and Fright. I'd never seen it before,
Oh,
but
wow.
I grew up watching the movies of Nick Rogue and Peter Weir. They were very popular in the 70s, particularly Walkabout. And I was always taking, because I was very impressionable, 10, 11, 12 years old. I would go to the cinema and watch them. And Walkabout really tore my heart out because it's a movie ultimately about unrequited love. And I couldn't understand what the heck was going on with the father at the beginning. I'm a child watching this guy shooting his kids in the outback. I'm like, this is nuts. Dad, why are you taking me to watch this? But I couldn't take my eyes off of it. And so, yes, those movies had a big impact on me. But I think the movie that really was a model for me was Burt Lancaster and John Cheever's The Swimmer.
Oh, yeah, of course.
That for me was closer to where I was trying to go in terms of the emotional content of my character, that he was trying to chase a past life, a dream that doesn't exist for him anymore. And I love that short story. I think Cheever's a great writer. So the other thing that really I responded to was that we're going to shoot this all in a parking lot and a beach. We were in one location the whole time. We didn't move around. That was it. And I thought, okay, how are we going to do this? Will the audience stay with us? And that was the challenge.
Well, another thing too that really resonated for me with the movie is that it also shows you how, like, it really doesn't take much. One bad day could kind of completely destroy somebody psychologically. And I thought that you did an amazing job kind of evoking that, where to the point during the movie, I didn't know if he was crazy or not. I didn't know if what I'd seen before was actually real or if it was just a figment of his imagination. And I thought usually a movie like this, I feel like I can usually figure it out, and I couldn't really with this one.
I think by intention, actually, I think Lorcan wanted to keep it intentionally enigmatic and create a narrative that was not linear and be more surrealist, psychedelic, dream logic, if you will, with the flashbacks and the foretelling and the forward cuts. I think there were places that even I was mystified. Like, what are you doing, Lorcan? Where are we going with this? Are you saying that I'm the father, or am I Nick Kasem's character? What? And I saw the movie twice, and I loved the movie. It's true, and I loved it even more the second time. And I think that Lorcan really created something that is just doesn't need to be overly explained. It's just a little work of art that he made, a cinematic piece, and that I like alternative movies and alternative music, and that's sort of what it felt like to me. You couldn't say, "Oh, this has got a catchy hook. Oh, this is fast. This is thrilling." No, it's just taking its time and going in weird directions, and I like that.
Well, I got to see it with an audience at South by, and they loved it. So I really enjoyed watching it. Thank you very much for taking the time to speak to me.
Thanks for being there. I like that night. That was a fun night.
Oh, it was awesome.
Yeah.
Take care. So I really enjoyed the movie. I got to see it at South by Southwest, and it did remind me in the best way of all those Australian movies that I love from the 70s and 80s. But I got to ask, what makes Australia the place that you wanted to set something like this? Because I feel like it's such a great location for doing, especially these kind of like, it has this stereotype, I think, of being ultra macho, but then when you watch their movies, they actually really deconstruct that stereotype, and the movie does the same thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, setting wise,
the story was taking place over Christmas because it has these sort of themes of like slightly biblical themes. It's not a religious movie or anything, but you know, rebirth, and Julian's character kind of plays this you know, Jesus / devil type character. And so I mean, for it to take place in the blistering heat over Christmas, obviously Australia is the perfect location, but also we wanted to re-examine in a way the Australian new wave and the Ozploitation films, do a contemporary version, whereas like in say Wake and Fright, they were all these, you know, rough country men who were like drinking and fighting and everything, whereas Australia's moved on from that quite a lot, you know. But now there's a kind of a yuppie class where properties are really expensive, and a lot of these surf beaches are actually really exclusive, and property on them is through the roof, you know. But at the same time, they are still, you know, display this machismo. Well, in terms of like Julian McMahon's character, anyway, he offers up something to these kind of lost guys who you know have masculinity and crisis issues in a way, and that serves for Nick's, you know, journey through the film, like whether Julian's trying to help him or he's trying to hurt him, you know. But one way or another, he has to, you know, suffer before he can surf.
Well, I also liked how, you know, casting Nicolas Cage is not the usual choice that you would assume in an Australian movie, and I think that the choice not to have him do an accent was interesting because it really does make him feel like an outsider, even though he is supposed to be an Australian. Can you talk a little bit about that? Was there ever thought pattern that maybe he would affect an accent?
Yeah, well, not that he'd have an accent, but in an earlier draft, he was Australian, as in the character was Australian, but moving from one part of Australia to another. And then we thought, actually, you know, why are we limiting ourselves? It could be more interesting if he left as a child, lost his accent, and then returns. You know, it'll only amplify the feeling of him being an outsider. That you know, if you're from somewhere and then you return back there like 40 years later and you sound completely different, and people are saying you're not local, and you're like, well, I was born here, and they're like, well, you're not local. It kind of messes with your mind, because identity a lot of the time is wrapped up in place and you know, belonging.
And also, I have to say, I thought Julian McMahon was terrific in this movie. Well, I just wanted to know what made you cast him, because I thought he was great. I'm used to him from Nip Tuck. I didn't even realize he was Australian. He was amazing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I needed someone who would be a good counterpoint to Nick, you know. So he's like a little bit taller. He's handsome. He has that kind of surfer physique as well. And the two of them together, I thought, could be just really interesting, because Julian, like when we chatted about the role, really wanted to play it that, like, from his perspective, he's trying to help him, you know. So that makes him quite an ambiguous character. That, like, yeah. Is he actually a good guy or is he a bad guy? Do you know what I mean? Which is always interesting to me. So then, like, seeing the two of them together then on set, like they met for the very first time when we were shooting that scene where he's offering him food by the car and like touching his face and everything. And there was just a brilliant dynamic between the two of them, you know, that like Nick almost wants to be him and but also hates him, you know? So yeah, I thought they were great together.
Thank you for clicking on our video, everybody. If you like what you saw here, please make sure you like the video and subscribe and share with your friends who like this sort of content. JoBlo was created by movie fans for movie fans, and we appreciate your support.